Hi, this is Mr. Curtis, and today what we're going to start talking about is genetics. And the reason that I call this Genetics 101 is because when you go off to college, a lot of the first classes that you start and take are going to be what are called 101 classes. If you take, for example, French, the very first class is French 101, and so on. I also like to call this, why does my nose look like Aunt Edna's? First, a few definitions. Traits. Traits are characteristics or qualities of a living thing. We talk about hair color, the shape of a leaf, the number of legs on an insect, for example. I want you to document on the side of your sheet which of these traits that you have. For example, this first one, anyone know who this actor is something called widow's peak. If you look over at his hairline, notice how the hair kind of comes together in almost a point. That's called widow's peak. You either have it or you don't, and it is a trait. Curly hair. Look at these two girls. Now, this girl, she has wavy hair, for sure. But this girl, she's got quite curly hair, much, much different. So write down whether or not you have curly or straight hair. This is something called hitchhiker's thumb. Hitchhiker's thumb. If you look at this person's thumb, notice how it goes and bends back like that. Whereas somebody who doesn't have hitchhiker's thumb, their thumb is relatively straight. Write down which one you have. Earlobes. Some people have detached earlobes. See how they're not really connected to the side of the person's head? Where some people have attached earlobes, where they go straight down. They don't have the little floppy thing. Tongue rolling. Very common, but not everybody has that. This is something called mid-digital hair. That's a big fancy way of saying whether you do or don't have hair on this knuckle. So if you look at this knuckle right here on your hand, write down whether or not you do have hair, like this dude does, or not. And lastly, freckles. You either have them or you don't. Now, a few other definitions. Heredity is the passing of traits from parents to offspring. Think about all the different traits that are being passed from this parent to its offspring. Genetics, then, is the study of heredity. How do these things get passed from one generation to the next? If interested, there's a career in this. This guy is working on corn. Corn, what do you need corn for? Well, think of all the different places that you could potentially grow corn. Drier places, wet places. Places with sandy soil, places with high clay amounts in their soil. All kinds of things. Windy areas, not so windy areas. All of those can lead to different types of corn growing in different kinds of areas. So yeah, there is definitely a job waiting for you if you're interested. Now, all of this genetic stuff really began with this guy, Gregor Mendel. He was the father of genetics. He lived in the 1800s, and he was a monk. He lived in a monastery, Catholic monastery, so no girls, no marriage, prayed a lot, meditated a lot, read a lot, and so on. And he had a lot of time on his hands. And one of the things that he liked to do was grow pea plants. And he started to make some observations. Well, he was a good scientist. And this is one of the things that he noticed. He looked at the flowers of a pea plant, not what you call real pretty, But he noticed that you could take pollen from one and transfer it to another. That's something called cross-pollination. And so what he did is he took a plant that produced yellow seed peas and a plant that produced green seed peas, and he crossed them. And what do you suppose the color was of those? Well, Mendel was thinking, let's see, if you cross yellow and green paint, what do you get? Kind of a light green, lime green? Well, it turned out the children all ended up with yellow seeds. Not kind of half and half, but all yellow. So then he took the children, which produced yellow, and he cross-pollinated them. And what do you suppose he got this time? He got yellow and green. And he would always get the same ratio, 3 yellow to 1 green. 75% to 25%. And he did this over and over and over, and he kept getting the same results. And he just kept wondering, was ist das los? That would be German for, what's up with that? So we'll continue this story later, but for now, see if you can be thinking about why he got the answers that he did. And we'll see you next time.